Welcome back. Today we are going to take a look at our second set of notes for Unit 1. These sets of notes are broken down into two essential questions. The first one is, how do geographers describe where and why by using maps? Two questions geographers often ask is why and where. Geographers ask these questions when they are studying both physical and human geography. If you remember, physical geography is when we look at natural forces, right? We're talking about climate, volcanoes, vegetation. Whereas human geography is where we study human activities, such as religion, language, and economics. Maps are the most important tool for geographers in both types of geography. So whether it's physical geography or human geography, a map is going to be your most important tool. Geographers use all different types of maps, and these are the types of maps that we are going to cover today: reference maps, choropleth maps, dot maps, symbol maps, cartograms, and topographic maps. This is an example of a reference map. You would use this map to figure out where you are in relation to something else. For example, the state of Minnesota is here. It is to the east of North Dakota and South Dakota, and to the west of Wisconsin, and to the north of Iowa. This is an example of a choropleth map. A choropleth map is where each state or each section is shaded a different color based on the number of turkeys in that state. So our choropleth map has a title of turkey production by state, so we know that we are looking at how many turkeys are produced each year in this state. Our key at the bottom shows us that the darker the brown color, the more turkeys are produced, and we are talking about thousands of turkeys per year. From this map, you can tell that Minnesota is in the higher range of turkey production when compared to all of our 4 neighboring states. Then you can also see that Florida is on the low range of turkey production. This is an example of a dot map. A dot map uses a dot or a symbol to show how many of something there is. So in this case, our dot map is talking about milk cows. And 1 dot equals 2,000 milk cows in the United States. From this map, we can tell that the majority of milk cows in the United States are found in Wisconsin or California. Not very many milk cows are found in North Dakota because there are very few dots. The more dots that are concentrated in one area, the higher the milk cow inventory. This is an example of a symbol map. A symbol map is similar to a dot map, where you have a symbol that represents a certain number of something. In this case, our map is talking about U.S. colleges and universities offering courses in cartography. The darker the symbol, the more important those courses are. So dots that are black in color have a high importance compared to dots that are white in color have a low importance. Also, the larger the dot, the more number of courses there are to offer. For example, Minnesota has a fair number of course offerings in cartography of high importance. South Dakota, on the other hand, has very few course offerings with low importance in cartography. This is a cartogram. A cartogram takes information and distorts the map to represent that information. So, this map is looking at the world's populations in 2002. Countries with higher populations are represented as larger on this map. For example, India and China are the 2 largest countries on this map because they have the largest populations. Canada, on the other hand, is very small on this map because Canada's population is not very large. When we look at a regular map of Canada, we know that Canada extends from the United States all the way north and is a very large country. But on this map, it's small because it represents a smaller population. Another example would be the United Kingdom. The United Kingdom is a fairly small country in Europe. However, on this map, it looks fairly large because they have a larger population. So again, a cartogram is a map that distorts the image based on the information that is being represented. This is an example of a topographic map. A topographic map oftentimes shows elevation of an area. So these two maps show the elevation of areas compared to one another. So on this map, you can tell that there's a valley that runs here with a lower elevation compared to the two hills on either side. And on this map, we can see that a city or a town has been built along a riverbank that has the lower elevation as well. You oftentimes find topographic maps more so in physical geography than you do in human geography. Okay, question number 1. Which of the following topics human geography? Climate, religion, cities, or language? The answer is climate. Climate is a topic of physical geography, not human geography. Question number 2. Which type of map is shown here? Dot scale, cartogram, choropleth, or topographic? The answer is topographic. It shows elevation. The geographer's vocabulary is made up of 5 common words: place, region, scale, space, and connections. We use these 5 words to help describe the world around us. Cartography is the science or the art of map making. Maps are very important in geography of all types, and maps are scale models of the real world. Geographers use maps as both a reference tool and as a communications tool. A map as a reference tool helps somebody figure out where they are or where something is in relation to something else. They're using it to reference their location. For example, this is a map of western Hennepin County in Minneapolis and St. Paul. Here we have Lake Minnetonka. The reference point of Lake Minnetonka shows that Wayzata is to the north and Minnetonka is to the east. You also have a reference point of 494 running north-south and 394 running east-west. So if a person was using this map to try to figure out how to get from Hopkins to Wayzata, they could use this map to go north on 169 and then to go west on 394 to enter Wayzata. This is an example of how geographers use a map as a communications tool. This map is communicating some sort of information to the viewer. In this case, what the map is communicating is the race and ethnicity of school district students from 1999 to the year 2000 in the Twin Cities. So the information that is being communicated to the viewers is what is the racial breakdown of student population. From this map, we can tell that the 2 most diverse districts in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area were Minneapolis and St. Paul, while the majority of the surrounding districts were less diverse. Question number 3. What is the purpose of this world map? This map shows global air traffic in the year 2010. Do we use this map as a reference tool to figure out where we are or how to get somewhere? Or do we use this map as a communications tool where some sort of information is being communicated to us? This map is used as a communications tool. This map is showing the flow of global air traffic. From this map, we can learn that the United States had the most global air traffic to and from. We can tell that the East Coast air traffic translated to South America and Europe, while the West Coast air traffic translated to Asia and Australia. This is a world map from the year 1569. Maps don't quite look like this today, and that's because geographers have been able to explore more of the world and get an accurate picture as to what the globe looks like, largely thanks to space exploration. What is map scale? Map scale is the relationship between the size of a map and the size on Earth. Obviously, we can't have maps that are true to scale or true to size maps of the world, because then we would have to have a whole nother world. Instead, our maps are scaled down in size, meaning they are reduced to user-friendly size. When a map is scaled down or when it gets shrunk, it impacts the level of detail in areas that are covered. For example, if you look at a map of Cottage Grove, you're going to see a lot of detail about certain street names and where things are located, such as Park High School. If you look at a map of Minnesota, on the other hand, you might not be able to see the exact street names of Cottage Grove or where exactly Park High School is. If you look even further and take a look at the map of the United States, you're definitely not going to be able to see the street names in Cottage Grove or the exact location of Park High School. When we look at a map scale, these things can be expressed in three ways. It is oftentimes shown as a ratio, meaning 1 to 15,000. That's the scale, like how many times it's been shrunk down. It can be written in a graphic, so a map scale that looks like this, or you can have some sort of other graphic. And when we're talking about scale, there are two different types of scale. We have large scale versus small scale. A large scale map shows greater detail over a small area. So an example of a large scale map would be something that would be close up, such as a map of your yard, your neighborhood, or your city. A small scale map, on the other hand, shows less detail over a large area. So an example would be a map of your country, your world, or your home, such as Earth. When I think of scale, I like to think of the word detail. So large scale means I'm going to get a large amount of detail in my map. I'm going to be able to see road names and exact locations. Small scale means I'm going to have a small amount of detail on my map. I'm going to get more big picture images. Here's an example of how a map scale can change. We start at the top and you have a map of the United States. This map is going to be small scale. As you zoom in on the Atlanta area, you get a larger amount of detail, so you have a larger scale map. Question number 4. Which map has the larger scale? So which map has the larger amount of detail? Map A or Map B? Map A has the larger amount of detail. We can see exactly where Park High School is located along 80th Street. Another term that geographers use to help describe maps is projection. Projection means that the only truly accurate model of Earth is a globe. And that's because Earth is a circular object. And a globe is a circular map. So in order to have a map without any distinction or projection or distortion, globes are our most accurate form. All two-dimensional maps that you see have some sort of distortion. Okay, that's because you're taking a three-dimensional object and making it 2D. You have to change something that's somewhere. These maps have some sort of distortion in the form of shape, distance, size, or direction. And there are many different types of maps that are created. Each of these different types of maps, each of these different projections of two-dimensional maps have some different level of distortion, whether it's cylindrical, planar, conic, or oval. So these are our projection types. This is just what happens when you take a globe, a 3D object, basically cut it down the center and roll it out flat. How is it going to look? So here's our different types of map projections. Each one looks a little different based on the distortion. Question number 5. Globes are the most accurate form of representing the Earth's surface because they are not distorted. True or false? That answer is true, because again, globes are circular three-dimensional objects, which mimic the representation of Earth in just a smaller scale. So all a globe is just the actual picture of Earth shrunken down. Geographers also use other tools just besides maps when looking at geography. Three major tools that they use are GPS, remote sensing, and GIS. GPS stands for Global Positioning System. This is where you have 24 military satellites that are used to pinpoint the location anywhere on Earth. GPS is commonly used for navigation and recreation and can be used to help find latitude, longitude, speed, elevation, and direction. Remote sensing, on the other hand, is where you use satellites to take pictures from space. It's called satellite-based mapping. This is your Google Earth stuff. Okay? It's where you take a still photo of what Earth looks like from space or from a satellite. Finally, you have GIS, or Geographic Information Systems. GIS is a computerized mapping that consists of using contrasting layers to show relationships. Basically, Geographic Information Systems is a mashup between a GPS and a remote sensing. So you have lots of different layers. So if you think about Google Earth when you use Google Earth, you not only just see the remote sensing image or that satellite-based photo, but you can also change direction and see different layers on your map, such as road names and locations. So this would be an example of a photo from Google Earth, right? You have a satellite that took a photo of Abbey Road. GPS is where you have your satellites that are constantly transmitting information back to Earth. So here's the rotation of the 24 military satellites and how that works. So on your cell phones, you probably all use a Maps app of some kind to figure out where you're going. That Maps app is using GPS to determine your location. Okay, again, remote sensing. Here's a picture of wildfires. Okay, so you can see the fires and then the smoke plumes coming up as well. And like I said, I like to think of remote sensing as taking a picture from space. And then Geographic Information Systems, or GIS, like I said, this is a mashup of lots of different layers of things. So you can not only see maybe the road names, but you could see the physical landmarks that are there. You could see whether it's grass or dirt or hills or trees. A lot of times when we use our weather apps, we use GIS, or Geographic Information Systems, to look at cloud cover as well as storm patterns and movement. Okay, question number 6. A computerized system that stores, organizes, retrieves, analyzes, and displays geographic data is what? Is it a GIS, Geographic Information Systems, aerial telemetry, remote sensing, or GPS? Answer is it's a GIS, a Geographic Information Systems. This is your mashup, or your lots of different layers. Okay, so our first essential question for today we have completed. Our second essential question is, how do we use the concepts of space, place, and regions to compare regions? Place. A sense of place is the feelings that make each spot unique, and place is often identified by location. There are 4 ways to identify location: place name, site, situation, and mathematical location. Place names are what a place is called. The official scientific fancy name for place name is called toponym. So the toponym of this high school where we are at is called Park High School. The toponym of the town in which Park High School exists is Cottage Grove. The toponym of the state that we live in is Minnesota. And a lot of times the origins of place names come from people, religion, history, physical features, or resources. Names often can and often do change in modern geography. The most notable in your recent years has been the renaming of Lake Calhoun in uptown Minneapolis to Midday-McCoska. Question number 1. What is the term used to describe the name given to a place? A name given to a place is a toponym. Another way to figure out location is to determine its site. Site is what does it look, smell, feel, and sound like. When I think of site, I like to think of my 5 senses. I'm looking at climate, vegetation, topography, and elevation. And site often influences the location of places, such as economics, defense, and resources. And sites can change or be altered to benefit mankind. Our example is the city of Manhattan in New York. This map shows the development of New York from the 1650s to the 1990s. New York's, or Manhattan, started as a small island in which only the very tip of the peninsula was inhabited. Over time, as more and more people began to settle there, the site, or what Manhattan looked and felt and smelt like, began to change and evolve. In the 1760s, you have more people moving in and you have factories that are being built. In the 1980s, you have less factories and more skyscraper type materials, more larger building. In the 1990s, Manhattan has become a fully urbanized center that is comprised of multiple skyscrapers and thousands of people. Situation is another way to describe location. Situation is where something is relative to other places. Situation is useful for unknown places and importance of location. So for example, on this map, we have the location of Smith Hall. When I am talking about the location of Smith Hall and its situation, I am going to say that it's next to the library, or it's across the mall area from Vincent Hall, okay? Or it's across the street from the science classroom building. So I'm describing where something is in relation to something else. Question number 2. Which of the following describes a place by using situation? The answer is A. It is next to a major trade center. Again, situation describes the location of something relative to something else. Another way to determine location is through mathematical location. Mathematical location is the absolute location, or its coordinates, its longitude and latitude. And longitude and latitude are built on a system of meridians and parallels. 0 degrees latitude and 0 degrees longitude represent the equator and the prime meridian. When you look at a globe, the globe is cut into 4 sections that are comprised of latitude and longitude. Latitude are the lines that run across the globe and separate the hemispheres into the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere. 0 degrees latitude is represented by the equator. Longitude, on the other hand, splits the globe the long way, right, into the eastern hemisphere or the western hemisphere. 0 degrees longitude is the prime meridian. Longitude and latitude are determined based on astronomy and time. Question number 3. 0 degrees latitude is called what? And 0 degrees longitude is called what? 0 degrees latitude is called the equator, and 0 degrees longitude is called the prime meridian. Longitude and latitude also affect time zones. There are approximately 24 time zones on Earth with approximately 15 degrees of longitude in between. Time zones were created by railroads in the 1880s because people were traveling longer distances in a shorter amount of time, and they had to equate for the rising and setting of the sun and why it differs from one place compared to the other. The baseline for the time zones is the Greenwich Mean Time, which is in the United Kingdom. The United States has 4 time zones, plus Alaska and Hawaii, and the international dateline is approximately at 180 degrees longitude. Here in Minnesota, we fall in the Central Time Zone. And so we are 5 hours behind Greenwich Mean Time, which means that the time in the UK or in the United Kingdom is 5 hours ahead of us. So right now, if it's 12 o'clock p.m. in Minnesota, it would mean that it's 5 o'clock p.m. in the UK. The east coast of the United States is on the Eastern Time Zone. They are 1 hour ahead of us. So if it is 12 o'clock p.m. in Minnesota, it is 1 o'clock p.m. in New York City. If you go to the west, you have Mountain Time, and the Mountain Time Zone is 1 hour behind the Central Time Zone. So if it's 12 o'clock p.m. in Minnesota, it is 11 o'clock a.m. in Denver, Colorado. And then the West Coast represents the Pacific Time Zone. California is 2 hours behind the Central Time Zone. So for example, if it's 12 o'clock p.m. in Minnesota, it is 10 o'clock a.m. in California. And the international dateline is found here. So when you cross the international dateline, you are either going ahead a day or you are going behind a day. So for example, if I was in Alaska and it was 1 a.m. in Alaska, it would be 11 p.m. on the previous day in the northern part of Russia. Question number 4. If it is 3 p.m. in Minneapolis, what time is it in Boston? It is 4 p.m. in Boston when it's 3 p.m. in Minneapolis because they are 1 hour ahead of us. Regions help geographers group locations by one or more distinctive traits. Sometimes regions can be very difficult to define. Other times, they're very easy to define. And a place may belong to many different regions. There are 3 main types of regions: formal, functional, and vernacular. A formal region is an area in which everyone shares the same characteristic. Informal regions can be measured on a map. For example, the United States is a formal region. Everybody in the United States shares the same characteristics that they are in the United States. Another example of a formal region would be the country of Spain. Right? You have a formal boundary line to which you are in Spain or you are not in Spain. A functional region, on the other hand, is an area that is organized around a focal point or a node. Functional regions are sometimes often called nodal regions. In these regions and their characteristics tend to get weaker as they move away from their node, and this is called distance decay. When I think of functional regions, I think of radio stations. So I listen to radio stations in the Twin Cities, and when I take a road trip down to Iowa to visit my family, I can always tell when I'm getting further away from the Twin Cities because my radio signal starts to go out. And eventually, the radio station that I was listening to won't come in anymore because I'm too far away. Another example is pizza delivery. If you're going to order pizza, your delivery is going to come from a store that is located near your house. You wouldn't order pizza delivery or have delivery be an option from a store that would be located outside of that pizza delivery's functional region. Again, just an example of radio stations and what their regions are on the East Coast. So you notice that they have functional regions, so they're all centered around an area. These are all examples of functional region maps. The last type of region is a vernacular region. Vernacular regions are also known as perceptual regions. These are regions in which people associate them with their cultural identity. Vernacular regions exist because people believe that they exist, but are very hard to define. For example, this map shows that Cottage Grove is a southeastern suburb of Minneapolis in St. Paul. For me, personally, I would consider Hastings to also be a southeastern suburb of St. Paul. On this map, however, Hastings does not make the cut for a southeastern suburb or southeastern region. So my perception of what the southeastern suburbs are and what the person who made this map's perception of the southeastern suburbs are different. So we have different vernacular regions for the southeast. Another example is areas in the United States. For example, I would consider all of Minnesota and Wisconsin to be part of the Midwest. However, on this map, the northern part of Minnesota and the northern part of Wisconsin are considered to be part of just the North. I've never even heard of a region called the North outside of Game of Thrones. So each person's perception of a region can be slightly different. Therefore, my definition of the Midwest can be different from your definition of the Midwest, and that's okay because they are perceptual regions. Question number 5. The United States is what kind of region? The United States is a formal region. We have clear boundaries, and everybody that lives within the United States or is in the United States shares the same characteristics of being inside an area that they call the United States. Globalization is the shrinking of the world. Basically, what globalization is that everybody in the world is connected. And globalization can be defined as actions that involve the entire globe and make things worldwide in scope. Globalization is greatly aided by technology and has continued to expand over recent years. Economics are largely shaped by globalization, meaning we have transnational corporations and that are more specialized at the local level. For example, I can go to McDonald's in Cottage Grove, and I can also go to McDonald's in Paris, France, and I can also go to McDonald's in parts of Japan. It doesn't matter where I go because McDonald's is a transnational corporation. I'm going to find it in multiple different countries. Culture has also been aided by globalization, where it has standardized cultural landscapes and traditions are often threatened. We will learn more about culture and how it is impacted by globalization in Unit 5. Question number 6. The economy of the United States is not affected by the economies of other countries. That answer is false. The economy in the United States is absolutely impacted by the economies of other countries. In fact, the economy in the United States could not exist if it did not partner with other economies around the world. Distribution is how things are arranged across an area of space. We have the properties of distribution that are density and concentration and pattern. Density is the number of things in an area. Concentration is how something is spread out over an area, whether it's clustered or dispersed. And pattern is the method of organization of an object in an area. The pattern may be geometric or it may be organic. Question number 7. Which of the following is not a way in which geographers measure density? Arithmetic, physiological, concentration, or agricultural? The answer is concentration. Density is measured in 3 different ways: arithmetic, physiological, and agricultural. We will talk more about density and the pattern and organization of density in a later set of notes. So diffusion is how something is spread out from one place to another. The hearth is the point of diffusion, or like the home base in diffusion. And there are basic types of diffusion, which is relocation or expansion. Relocation diffusion is spread throughout physical movements, for example, language, religion, and ethnicity. This is where people physically get up and move. And when they get up and move, they take their ideas, their culture, their language, and whatever it is, and they bring it with them. So those ideas are spread through relocation. Another type of diffusion is expansion. Expansion diffusion is also known as hierarchical diffusion. And this is where you have something that comes from a power or authority and starts small and is eventually spread over a large area. When I think of expansion or hierarchical diffusion, I think of fashion trends, where it starts at the New York Fashion Week or Paris Fashion Week, and pretty soon celebrities are wearing these trends, and pretty soon after that, almost everybody else is wearing these trends. So it starts with a small focused group and grows from there. Question number 8. Language and religion tend to be spread through what type of diffusion? Answer is relocation diffusion. When people physically move from one spot to another, they take their language and religion with them. Okay, we have reached the end of the notes. What you are going to do now is you are going to create a notes summary. Because we have 2 essential questions that we are answering, I am looking for 6 to 8 sentences total. 3 to 4 sentences to answer the first question: how do geographers describe where things are using maps? And 3 to 4 sentences to answer the second question: how do we use the concepts of space, place, and regions to compare regions? When you are finished with your notes summary, please turn it in.